What if I told you that the most painful moments of your life were never meant to destroy you, but to sharpen you? Most people spend their lives trying to escape pain, numb it, distract from it, or erase it as quickly as possible. But the Stoics believed something radically different. They believed pain was not an enemy, it was a teacher. And the moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this shaping me into?" everything changes. This shift alone separates people who remain stuck in suffering from those who rise from it with strength, clarity, and power. Pain feels personal, but it isn't. It feels targeted, but it's not. Life doesn't single you out. It applies pressure evenly, and your response determines the outcome. When something hurts, the mind immediately wants to blame a person, the past, bad luck, or even yourself. Stoicism teaches a simpler, calmer truth. You don't control what happens, but you always control how you meet it. The moment you accept that pain is unavoidable, but misery is optional, you regain authority over your inner world. This doesn't mean pretending things don't hurt. It means refusing to let pain turn into bitterness, self-pity, or paralysis. One of the most powerful mindset shifts is understanding that pain is information, not a punishment. Emotional pain tells you where you are attached, where you are afraid, and where your identity is fragile. Instead of pushing that discomfort away, the Stoics encouraged observing it calmly, almost like a scientist. What exactly am I feeling? Where do I feel it? What belief is underneath this reaction? When you slow down and look at pain this way, it loses its power to overwhelm you. It becomes something you can work with instead of something that controls you. Another shift happens when you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as a participant in your own growth. Many people unknowingly build their identity around what hurt them, what they went through, who wronged them, what they lost. Stoicism invites you to loosen your grip on that story, not by denying it, but by refusing to live inside it forever. You are not your worst experience. You are the awareness that survived it. And when you stop rehearsing the pain as a defining feature of who you are, you create space for strength to grow in its place. There is also a quiet power in accepting reality exactly as it is, without arguing with it in your mind. Much of our suffering comes not from the event itself, but from the mental fight against it. This shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't feel this way. Stoicism teaches that reality doesn't need your approval to exist. The faster you accept what is, the faster you can decide what to do next. Acceptance is not surrender. It's the starting point of action. Another key shift is realizing that pain can refine your character instead of hardening it. Two people can go through the same hardship and come out completely different. One becomes bitter, closed off, and distrustful. The other becomes calm, wise, and unshakable. The difference isn't the pain, it's the meaning assigned to it. When you decide that pain will make you more disciplined, more patient, and more self-aware, you turn adversity into training. Like weight on a muscle, resistance becomes the very thing that builds strength. Stoicism also teaches the value of emotional discipline, not suppressing emotions, but not letting them run your life. Pain often triggers impulsive reactions, anger, withdrawal, self-destructive habits, or chasing validation. The Stoic mindset pauses before reacting. It creates space between feeling and action. In that space, you regain control. You learn that just because you feel something strongly doesn't mean you have to obey it. This single realization can change the direction of your life. Another powerful shift is learning to separate what is within your control from what is not. You cannot control how people treat you, how quickly things change, or how the past unfolded. But you can control your effort, your standards, your values, and your response. When pain enters your life, focus your energy only on what you can influence. This prevents emotional exhaustion and restores a sense of stability even during chaos. Pain also has a way of stripping away illusions. It shows you who truly matters, what truly lasts, and what was never solid to begin with. Instead of mourning the loss of false security, Stoicism teaches gratitude for clarity. When something falls apart, it's often because it was never aligned with who you are becoming. Pain clears the path, even when it doesn't feel like it at first. Over time, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. You stop fearing pain as much. You realize you've survived it before. You've adapted. You've learned. This confidence doesn't come from positive thinking. It comes from evidence. Evidence that you are stronger than you once believed. And when pain no longer terrifies you, it loses its ability to control your choices. As you continue walking this path, another mindset shift begins to take hold. One that feels uncomfortable at first, but incredibly freeing once it settles in. You start to understand that pain doesn't demand urgency. Most people rush to escape discomfort because they believe something is wrong if it hurts. Stoic thinking slows this down. It teaches you that not every painful feeling requires immediate fixing, reacting, or explaining. Some emotions are meant to be felt fully and allowed to pass on their own. When you stop panicking about discomfort, you stop adding fear on top of pain. And fear is what usually makes suffering spiral out of control. There is also a shift in how you view time. Pain makes everything feel permanent when it isn't. In the middle of loss, rejection, or failure, the mind convinces you that this feeling will last forever. Stoicism cuts through that illusion. It reminds you that everything moves, everything changes, and nothing emotional stays frozen unless you keep replaying it. When you remind yourself that this moment is temporary, even if it lasts months or years, you regain patience. And patience turns pain into endurance rather than despair. Another quiet transformation happens when you stop expecting life to be fair. This doesn't make you cynical, it makes you steady. Expecting fairness creates constant disappointment because life doesn't operate on moral balance sheets. The Stoics believe peace comes from releasing unrealistic expectations and dealing with reality as it actually is. When pain arrives, instead of asking, "Why me?" you begin asking, "Given that this happened, what is the most grounded response I can choose?" That single question shifts you from emotional chaos into self-respect. Pain also reveals where your boundaries are weak. Often, emotional suffering comes from overgiving, over-attaching, or relying too heavily on things outside your control for your sense of worth. Stoic mindset shifts teach you to reclaim your center. You begin to value your character more than approval, your principles more than comfort, and your long-term stability more than short-term relief. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you anchored, and an anchored person doesn't collapse when waves hit. As this mindset deepens, you stop seeing setbacks as proof that you're failing and start seeing them as feedback. Pain shows you what needs adjustment. Maybe it's a habit, a belief, a relationship, or a direction. Instead of resisting that message, Stoicism encourages curiosity. What is this moment asking me to learn? What is it revealing that comfort never could? When pain becomes feedback, it stops being random and starts becoming useful. Another important shift is learning to respect your own resilience. Many people underestimate themselves because they measure strength by how little they feel. Stoicism flips that idea. Strength isn't the absence of pain, it's the ability to remain steady while experiencing it. When you realize you can feel deeply without falling apart, you stop fearing your own emotions. You no longer see yourself as fragile. You see yourself as tested and still standing. Pain also sharpens your sense of responsibility for your inner life. You begin to understand that while you didn't choose what happened to you, you do choose the habits of thought you practice afterward. Replaying the story, feeding resentment, or constantly revisiting old wounds keeps pain alive. Stoic discipline gently interrupts that cycle. It teaches you to redirect your attention, not by denial, but by intention. Where attention goes, energy follows. And where energy flows, your life slowly reshapes itself. As this continues, your relationship with yourself changes. You stop abandoning yourself in moments of difficulty. Instead of harsh self-talk or self-blame, you develop a calm, steady inner voice that says, "I can handle this." This voice isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet and dependable. Over time, it becomes stronger than the noise of fear, doubt, or regret. This inner stability is one of the greatest forms of power Stoicism offers. Eventually, pain stops feeling like an interruption to your life and starts feeling like part of the process of becoming who you are meant to be. Not something to chase, not something to glorify, but something you no longer run from. When you reach this point, pain still hurts, but it no longer defines you. It no longer owns your future. And that is where real power begins to take shape. As you go even deeper, something subtle but profound starts to shift in how you experience yourself during pain. You stop identifying with the pain and start identifying as the one who is aware of it. This may sound small, but it changes everything. Instead of saying, "I am broken," "I am anxious," or "I am failing," the inner language becomes, "I am experiencing pain, I am noticing fear, I am moving through uncertainty." Stoicism teaches this separation because identity determines endurance. When pain becomes who you are, it consumes you. When pain becomes something you observe, you remain intact. At this level, you begin to realize that much of suffering comes from resistance to reality, not reality itself. The mind constantly tries to rewrite the past or control the future, and when it can't, it tightens. Stoics believed peace comes from aligning the mind with what already is. This doesn't mean liking what happened. It means removing the extra layer of mental struggle that says, "This shouldn't exist." Once that resistance drops, pain still exists, but the suffering around it collapses. Another deep shift occurs when you stop looking to pain for validation. Many people, without realizing it, use suffering as proof that they mattered, that something was important, that love was real, or that the wound was justified. Stoicism quietly removes that need. It teaches that your worth was never created by what you lost or endured. When you no longer need pain to confirm meaning, you are free to let it go without feeling like you are erasing your past. You also begin to understand the difference between emotional intensity and emotional truth. Pain is loud. It demands attention. But loud emotions are not always accurate reflections of reality. Stoic discipline trains you to pause and ask, "Is this feeling helping me see clearly, or is it distorting my view?" Over time, this practice sharpens judgment. You stop making permanent decisions based on temporary emotional storms, and that alone saves people from years of unnecessary suffering. At a deeper level, pain reshapes your relationship with control. You stop trying to control outcomes and start focusing on conduct. This is one of the core Stoic ideas. You may not control what happens, but you always control who you are while it happens. When pain enters your life, you shift attention inward, toward integrity, patience, courage, and restraint. These qualities cannot be taken from you by any external event. And when you root your sense of power in what cannot be taken, pain loses its leverage. You also develop a new respect for silence and stillness. Pain often pushes people to explain themselves, defend their story, or seek reassurance from others. Stoicism teaches the strength of quiet endurance, not because your pain isn't real, but because not everyone deserves access to your inner world. When you learn to hold pain without broadcasting it, you reclaim dignity. You stop bleeding emotionally in public spaces that cannot help you heal. Another deep realization emerges. Pain doesn't always need resolution. It needs integration. Some wounds don't fully disappear. Some losses remain part of your story. Stoicism doesn't promise erasure, it offers mastery. Instead of waiting for closure, you learn to carry what happened without letting it weigh you down. Integration means pain becomes part of your strength rather than an open wound. It stops defining your future choices. As this mindset settles in, your standards change. You become less impressed by comfort and more impressed by character. You begin to value people who are calm under pressure, honest with themselves, and consistent over time. Pain refines your values because it shows you what actually matters when everything superficial falls away. And once your values are clear, decision-making becomes simpler, even when life is hard. Eventually, you reach a point where pain no longer threatens your sense of self. It may slow you down, but it doesn't knock you off course. You trust your ability to endure, adapt, and grow. This trust doesn't come from theory. It comes from lived experience. And when you trust yourself at this level, fear loosens its grip. You move forward, not because you are unhurt, but because you are no longer afraid of being hurt. As transformation deepens, pain stops feeling like something that interrupts your life and starts feeling like something that reveals it. You begin to see that many of the versions of yourself you once clung to were built for safety, not truth. Pain has a way of dismantling those versions. It removes the masks you wore to be accepted, the habits you used to stay comfortable, and the stories you told yourself to avoid growth. At first, this feels like loss, but over time, it becomes liberation. You are no longer maintaining a fragile identity. You are becoming something solid. At this stage, you develop a new relationship with fear. Instead of treating fear as a warning sign to stop, you start seeing it as a signal that you are approaching the edge of your comfort zone. Stoic transformation teaches that fear often guards the doorway to expansion. When pain and fear show up together, it usually means something old is ending and something stronger is forming. You no longer ask how to avoid fear, you ask how to move forward with it beside you. Another transformation happens in how you measure progress. You stop looking for external proof that you are healed or better. Instead, you notice internal changes, how quickly you recover after disappointment, how calmly you respond to provocation, how little energy you waste on things you cannot change. These quiet victories are invisible to others, but they are the true markers of growth. Stoicism values inner order over outer applause. You also begin to understand the discipline of choosing meaning over mood. Pain often comes with emotional swings, some days heavy, some days manageable. Stoic thinking teaches you not to build your life around how you feel in the moment. Instead, you commit to principles that remain steady, even when emotions fluctuate. This creates momentum. You act not because you feel strong, but because acting with integrity builds strength over time. At an even deeper level, you release the need for life to make sense immediately. Pain rarely arrives with explanations. The Stoics believed wisdom comes from patience with ambiguity. You stop demanding clarity before taking the next step. You trust that understanding often comes later, sometimes much later. This trust allows you to move forward without needing all the answers, which is a rare and powerful form of confidence. Transformation also changes how you relate to other people. You become less reactive and more discerning. Pain teaches you the cost of emotional chaos, so you choose calm connections over intense but unstable ones. You stop trying to be understood by everyone and start prioritizing being true to yourself. This shift reduces conflict and strengthens self-respect. There is also a moment when you realize that pain has made you more capable of compassion, but without self-sacrifice. You understand suffering because you've lived it, yet you no longer absorb other people's pain as your responsibility. Stoicism teaches compassion with boundaries. You can care deeply without losing yourself. This balance is one of the highest forms of emotional maturity. As transformation solidifies, you notice that your inner dialogue has changed completely. The voice that once panicked now plans. The voice that once blamed now reflects. The voice that once sought escape now seeks alignment. This isn't forced positivity, it's earned calm. Pain has trained your mind to be steady under pressure. Eventually, pain becomes a reference point rather than a wound. You remember what you survived, not to relive it, but to remind yourself of your capacity. When new challenges arise, you don't collapse, you adjust. You've seen what you can endure, and that knowledge becomes quiet confidence. At this depth of transformation, power is no longer aggressive or loud. It is composed, patient, and grounded. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to rush healing or explain your journey. You simply move forward with clarity, restraint, and self-trust. Pain has done its work, not by breaking you, but by refining you into someone who cannot be easily shaken. As you stand in this phase of transformation, this is where action quietly matters more than inspiration. Knowledge alone does nothing unless it is practiced when it's inconvenient. If this message is resonating with you, if you can feel parts of your own story inside these words, then don't let it pass through you unnoticed. Take a moment to ground this insight, slow down, reflect. And if this perspective is helping you see pain differently, let it reinforce your commitment to growth. Show that commitment by engaging with this space. Like this video so it reaches others who need it. Share it with someone who may be carrying silent weight, and subscribe to Psychovest so you continue strengthening the mindset that turns adversity into power. This isn't just content, it's training for the mind you are building. Once that initial commitment is made internally, something even quieter begins to happen. You stop needing constant motivation to keep going. Motivation fades, but structure remains. Stoic growth is built on this idea, that consistency matters more than emotional intensity. Pain no longer throws your entire life off course. It becomes something you account for, like weather. You adjust your pace, not your direction. This is a powerful shift, because most people abandon themselves the moment progress feels uncomfortable. You don't. At this stage, you start to understand that peace is not the absence of hardship, but the absence of inner resistance. You may still feel tired, disappointed, or uncertain, but there is no internal argument raging anymore. You are not fighting your own thoughts all day. This internal silence creates clarity. You can think more clearly, act more deliberately, and recover more quickly. Pain loses its ability to scatter your energy. Another deep realization emerges. Not everything that hurts requires interpretation. Some pain simply needs presence. Stoicism teaches restraint in meaning-making because over-analysis often traps people in loops. When you stop dissecting every feeling and start allowing some experiences to simply pass through you, emotional weight lightens. You become less mentally crowded, more grounded, and more focused on what is directly in front of you. Your standards continue to evolve. You begin choosing long-term stability over short-term relief. You resist the urge to escape pain through distraction, numbing, or unhealthy attachments. Instead, you build routines that support resilience, rest, discipline, reflection, and honest self-assessment. These are not dramatic habits, but they compound quietly. Over time, they create a life that can absorb pressure without collapsing. Pain also teaches you how to conserve energy. You stop arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop explaining yourself to those who have already decided who you are. Stoic wisdom teaches that energy is finite and should be invested where it can grow. This shift alone brings peace, because much suffering comes from fighting battles that never needed to be fought. As you continue, you notice that your reactions slow down. Where you once snapped, panicked, or withdrew, you now pause. This pause is not weakness, it's power. It gives you the ability to choose your response instead of being dragged by impulse. In that pause, you protect your dignity. And dignity, once strengthened, becomes a stabilizing force no external chaos can easily disrupt. There is also a deepening trust in life itself, not blind optimism, but earned confidence. You trust that whatever arrives, you will meet it with composure. You no longer demand certainty before moving forward. You understand that clarity often comes through action, not before it. This trust removes hesitation and replaces it with calm forward motion. Eventually, pain stops shaping your identity and starts sharpening your wisdom. You no longer define yourself by what hurt you, but by how you respond to what continues to challenge you. This is not the loud triumph people expect. It is quieter, deeper, and more sustainable. You don't feel the need to announce your strength, you live it. And from this place, you move differently through the world. You listen more than you speak. You choose your words carefully. You act with intention. Pain has slowed you down just enough to make you precise, and precision, not force, is what creates lasting power. In daily life, this mindset shows up first in the smallest moments, not the dramatic ones. It appears when things don't go as planned, and you notice that you don't spiral the way you used to. A delayed response, a cancelled plan, a mistake at work. These things still register, but they no longer hijack your entire mood. You deal with what's in front of you calmly, without adding unnecessary meaning to it. You stop asking, "What does this say about me?" and start asking, "What's the next sensible step?" This practical calmness is one of the clearest signs that pain has been integrated rather than suppressed. In your routines, you become more intentional and less reactive. You don't chase productivity to prove your worth, and you don't avoid effort just because you feel off. You work when it's time to work, rest when it's time to rest, and you stop negotiating with your emotions every step of the way. This creates stability. Your days stop being ruled by highs and lows and start being guided by structure. Over time, this steadiness compounds into confidence because you trust yourself to show up regardless of how you feel. In relationships, the shift is even more noticeable. You stop trying to control how others see you, and as a result, your interactions become more honest. You speak more clearly, listen more carefully, and react less defensively. Pain has taught you that emotional chaos destroys connection, so you choose composure instead. You don't take everything personally, and you don't need constant reassurance. This makes you easier to be around, but more importantly, it makes you safer to yourself. You also become more selective. Stoic growth doesn't isolate you, but it does refine your circle. You recognize patterns faster, who drains you, who respects your boundaries, who thrives on drama, and who values consistency. Instead of trying to fix or save people, you allow them to be who they are and adjust your distance accordingly. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. In conflict, this mindset changes everything. You no longer argue to win or to be validated. You focus on what actually matters. If something needs to be addressed, you do it directly and calmly. If it doesn't, you let it go without replaying it later. Pain has taught you the cost of unnecessary emotional battles, so you choose peace without guilt. You understand that not every reaction deserves expression, and not every disagreement requires resolution. When it comes to decisions, pain-trained thinking brings patience and precision. You stop rushing choices just to escape discomfort. You allow uncertainty to exist while you gather information and reflect. This leads to better outcomes because your decisions are no longer driven by fear, loneliness, or urgency. You ask yourself simple, grounded questions. Does this align with my values? Does this strengthen or weaken my long-term stability? Am I choosing this to grow or to avoid discomfort? You also become more comfortable making hard choices. Walking away, saying no, delaying gratification, these things stop feeling like punishment and start feeling like self-respect. Pain has shown you what happens when you abandon yourself, so you no longer do it casually. Even when a decision is difficult, there is less inner conflict because your actions match your principles. In moments of stress, you rely less on external soothing and more on internal regulation. You breathe, you pause, You observe your thoughts instead of obeying them. This doesn't mean you never feel overwhelmed. It means you recover faster. You don't catastrophize. You don't assume the worst. You deal with what's real, not what your fear imagines. Over time, people may notice something different about you, even if they can't name it. You're calmer, more grounded, less reactive. You don't overshare, over-explain, or over-promise. You show up consistently. Pain has stripped away unnecessary noise and left you with something solid, self-trust. And in everyday moments, walking, working, speaking, deciding, you live from a place that no longer depends on things going your way to feel okay. You move forward with quiet confidence, knowing that whatever comes, you have the inner structure to meet it. This is how pain, once transformed, becomes a steady source of power woven into daily life. As this way of living continues, you begin to notice how little energy you waste compared to before. Your mind is no longer constantly reviewing the past or rehearsing the future. You stay anchored in the present moment because that's where your influence actually exists. This doesn't make life dull, it makes it efficient. You respond to what is real instead of fighting imaginary versions of events that never happen. Pain once scattered your focus. Now it has trained you to concentrate. In conversations, you become more deliberate with your words. You don't speak just to fill silence or to ease discomfort. You listen more than you talk, and when you do speak, it's with intention. Pain has taught you that words carry weight, especially when emotions are involved. This restraint builds trust. People sense that when you speak, it comes from clarity rather than impulse. You no longer need to prove your intelligence, your goodness, or your strength. You let consistency do that for you. You also grow comfortable with emotional independence. You no longer look to others to regulate how you feel. Praise doesn't inflate you, and criticism doesn't destroy you. This balance creates inner freedom. You appreciate support when it's offered, but you don't depend on it to stay grounded. Pain has shown you that relying entirely on external validation is fragile. Self-respect, once built, is far more stable. In moments of solitude, your relationship with yourself becomes calm rather than restless. You no longer need constant noise or distraction to feel okay. Stillness doesn't scare you, it restores you. Stoic thinking trains the mind to be a steady companion rather than a source of pressure. This inner quiet allows insight to surface naturally, without forcing answers or conclusions. As challenges arise, you approach them with measured effort. You don't rush in emotionally or freeze in fear. You assess, adapt, and act. Even when outcomes are uncertain, your behavior remains consistent. Pain has taught you that chaos on the outside doesn't require chaos on the inside. This steadiness becomes your advantage in situations where others panic or overreact. You also stop romanticizing suffering. You don't seek hardship to prove strength, and you don't glorify pain as virtue. Stoicism isn't about wanting difficulty, it's about meeting it well when it arrives. You choose ease when it's available and resilience when it's necessary. This balance keeps you grounded and prevents burnout. Gradually, your confidence becomes quieter but deeper. It's not built on achievements alone, but on trust in your ability to handle whatever comes next. You don't need guarantees to move forward. You've already faced uncertainty and survived. That knowledge stays with you, shaping how you approach every decision. In relationships, work, and personal goals, you move with a sense of internal order. You are no longer pulled in every direction by emotion or expectation. You know your limits, you respect them, and because of that, you become someone others can rely on, not because you carry their weight, but because you carry yourself well. This is how the Stoic mindset continues working quietly in the background of your life. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, day after day, turning past pain into present stability and future strength. As time passes, this mindset becomes less something you practice and more something you inhabit. You no longer wake up each day asking how to feel better. you ask how to live better. This subtle change reshapes your priorities. You focus less on chasing emotional highs and more on building a life that can hold both joy and difficulty without falling apart. Pain has taught you that comfort is temporary, but character is durable, and you begin investing accordingly. You start to notice that your emotional range feels wider, not narrower. Stoic strength does not numb you, it steadies you. You can experience happiness without clinging to it, and sadness without drowning in it. This balance gives you emotional flexibility. You move through experiences rather than getting stuck inside them. Pain once trapped you in extremes. Now it has trained you to stay centered. In your decisions, you rely more on judgment than impulse. When faced with temptation, pressure, or fear, you slow down just enough to ask yourself what kind of person this choice is shaping you into. This pause protects you from regret. You no longer trade long-term peace for short-term relief. Even when you choose something difficult, there is less internal resistance because your actions align with your values. Your sense of identity also stabilizes. You are no longer constantly redefining yourself based on circumstances, relationships, or external feedback. You know who you are because you've seen how you respond under pressure. Pain has revealed your core. This grounded identity makes you less reactive and more resilient, especially when life tries to shake your sense of direction. In relationships, this depth brings maturity. You communicate needs without guilt and listen without defensiveness. You don't avoid hard conversations, but you don't escalate them either. Pain has taught you that honesty delivered calmly is far more powerful than emotion delivered loudly. This allows relationships to either strengthen or naturally fall away without unnecessary damage. You also develop patience with processes, growth, healing, learning, and change. You stop demanding immediate results because pain has shown you that real transformation happens gradually. This patience reduces frustration and builds endurance. You keep going not because it's exciting, but because it's aligned. In moments of doubt, you don't collapse inward. You observe the doubt, acknowledge it, and continue forward anyway. Stoic thinking teaches that doubt is a mental event, not a command. This distinction prevents hesitation from becoming paralysis. You act with caution, not fear. Over time, your presence changes how people experience you. You become someone who brings calm into tense spaces, not by fixing everything, but by not adding chaos. This influence is quiet but strong. People sense your steadiness, even if they don't understand where it comes from. Pain, once something you feared, now feels like a reminder of how far you've come. Not something to relive, but something to respect. It no longer defines you, but it has refined you. And from this place, you continue building a life that is resilient, intentional, and deeply grounded, one choice at a time. Pain never disappears because it was never meant to. It was meant to shape you, temper you, and strip you down to what actually lasts. What Stoicism offers is not an escape from hardship, but a way to stand inside it without losing yourself. When pain no longer dictates your identity, reactions, or direction, it transforms from something that weakens you into something that steadies you. You stop needing life to be easy in order to be at peace. You stop needing certainty in order to move forward. You trust your ability to endure, adjust, and act with integrity regardless of circumstances. This is real power, not dominance over others, not control over outcomes, but mastery of the inner world. And once that mastery is built, nothing external can truly take it from you. If this perspective has shifted something inside you, carry it forward deliberately. Reflect on it, practice it. And if you want to continue strengthening this way of thinking, support this work by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs grounding, and subscribing to Psychovest, where we build calm, strength, clarity, and resilience that lasts.